Welcome to Bridging Gaps, the business podcast sharing the challenges and stories of fellow business owners.
Hello and welcome back to Bridging Gaps, the business podcast. In this week's episode, I am speaking to Richard Dwyer. You may be thinking, but you've already spoken to Richard, and that would be true. But it was the first part that I shared with you back in February, and this is the second part. Richard and I had a great conversation, and at the end of part one, we were just wrapping up at the point where Richard had told me about, the culture in his organization, the way that they hire people based on their values, and that it's a really culture by design. And he'd started to talk about the fact that he also did some business training. So we're going to pick up with Richard as he continues to tell us about the business training that he's done. It's something that I wasn't aware was available, and it's actually, well, it was quite interesting. I was really quite excited to hear about it. So join me now in welcoming Richard Dwyer, entrepreneur, investor, multiple business owner, TEDx speaker, stuntman, franchiser, and mentor. All round, great guy.
Business training as well. Read an awful lot. Spent time at the Disney Business Institute, learning how they successfully and consistently create happy customers.
So I'm going to ask you about that because I wasn't aware that I have been to Disneyland. I've noticed the ears you have here.
It's my graduation hat.
Is it?
It is. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. So the Disney Business Institute.
Yes.
I've never heard of that.
You have now.
I have now. Tell me about that.
Disney have got a program that they run for businesses of all shapes and sizes that teaches you how they do stuff. It's their secret sauce. I mean, they don't tell you everything, but it's pretty much near. It's really amazing training. When I heard about it, I was like, really? This sounds cool. Because I'm a huge Disney fan. I mean, Disney mugs.
Yes, I should say I've got a Minnie Mouse mug.
Just Walt Disney is, to me, like the entrepreneur. It's such you read his story and the history of Disney, and it so inspires me. If you can think, if you can dream it, you can do it. It's just, I just love everything about the guy. And so every time I've gone to Disney, I've been wowed by amazing, consistent service standards. And their Disney Business Institute, you can give them a big bag of money, and they'll teach you a thing or two. They do different programs from a day through to a week, and they're residential. The one I did was out at Florida, and we were based at one of the hotels or resorts by Magic Kingdom, and you're with other business owners and people from the corporate world are in training and learning from you. And you do field trips into the parks and do exercises on how how they're delivering service here and there and what they do. It's just amazing the detail, and it's such. If anyone out there listening is in the events industry and how to put on training and does trainings, you could learn so much from these guys. Every time I go to Disney, I swipe stuff. I go and talk to employees. I walk down Main Street and look at the detail and just chat to people and staff about their experience as an employee. Because what I've learned from companies like Disney, like Apple, like Google, is that our staff are our most important asset. They must come first and before the customer, and that we must invest into our staff and into the minds of our staff if we want to get the results out of our business. So we've taken a lot of the training we've learned at Disney, and we've put our own swoop on things, and we've put all our own training together with lots of Disney magical pixie dust touches to it, and a lot of our stuff. I mean, our onboarding training is called the Flair Necessities. So,
and it does make you want to start singing.
Well, funnily enough, that we have that music playing when they step into the classroom. But we have our service standards are represented by Freddie Flairbear, our confidence bear, and his best friends, the Tumble Teddies. We've got Safety Samuel Bear and Courtesy Claire Bear. We have Peter Bear, the performer.
And you didn't bring any of them with you.
they're around. They're around. They're in our culture. They're built in. But we use those as to help. But yeah, they're all ideas that we've gained through different trainings. But I think it's so important that business leaders invest in themselves, in their own education. We talked about school.
Yes.
Now, I'm sitting in a classroom at Disney, but they understand we all learn differently. They understand that how to get the message across in different ways. There's video, there's a lot of Disney stuff's all through storytelling, and that's the magic. It's storytelling so that people are engaged. That's how our brains are wired, is to learn through storytelling. And that's how Disney teach and deliver their courses. So that's how I've really engaged with their training.
Which is amazing. Well, just to even know that they do it, but also because I know I've from other people as well heard about the facts. I haven't been, so I would have gone to Disneyland back in Anaheim. So when I was a child, so a long time ago, and I've never been to Disney World. But just a friend of mine saying to me about the detail that they make sure that you remember where your car's parked, because one of the things that is the most sort of stressful is people come out, there's a massive car park.
Where's my car?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the things that they've put in place, all of those little bits to just help you to enjoy every element of it. Oh,
everything, in their words, everything speaks. Mm-hmm. And the car parking is a good example, because you may be parked in the Dumbo car park or the Goofy car. So you just have to remember a character. And then they even say to you, if when you come out of the park, if you don't know where you've parked, they say, what time did you enter the park? And they'll know where they were parking cars at that time. So there's little, everything is thought out. They're using technology across the parks in Florida. You have a wristband, you use it as currency, you can pay for everything and have all your shopping delivered to your hotel room. It opens your hotel room door, and you have it accesses your fast passes on all your rides, and there's an app so you can tap in and access rides and plan ahead. Restaurant reservations, etc.
It's just all seamless.
It's lovely.
And focused on enjoying yourself.
So I love it. I love good customer service. I love excellent customer service. My pet hate is bad customer service. I think as business owners, we can all learn from Disney in terms of the customer service, because when you talk to any customer, the main reason people leave a service company is because of poor service, or stop your mobile phone provider or your power provider. They'll leave because they're just so disappointed and annoyed with the levels of customer service. So to win customers over, you only need to be 10% better than your competitors. Mm-hmm. So if you could just focus on customer service and just up your levels of service, make it 10% better than everyone else, you've won already, and you're going to retain as well.
Which is so huge, because again, the staff turnover, if you're constantly losing people and having to retrain. So on the staff side, but then on the client side, if you're just losing them all the time, then it's that constant sales pressure, isn't it? And that's not even to build your company, that's to maintain it. Yeah,
the best way to increase your profits is to extend the lifetime of your customer, and increase the frequency of sales and the lifetime value of the customer. So retention of your customers is vital, and you'll do that through customer service. And then with your staff, you've got to train them well enough so that they could leave, but treat them well enough so that they don't want to leave. And it's so important that you look after them, nurture them, give them all the training so that they're so employable, but just treat them so well that they don't want to leave, because they are the most important people in the company.
And I love that, because I know you said that to me when we talked before as well. And I do. And I was thinking as you were talking before, I was saying, shoot, now who said that to me? I'm pretty sure it was you.
But I can't take credit for that, because I think Branson said that.
Okay.
I'd say
So we'll give Branson credit.
Yeah, give him credit for a lot. Yeah, he's another great role model for us all. I mean,
but it's so true. It's that I think quite often we get held back by our fear that if I teach them how to do what I do, or if I teach them how to do it really well, or if I spend money on them, then they're going to leave. Yeah. And it's having almost that, I don't know if it's braveness or certainty, that actually, if they like working here and I'm giving them those things that satisfy them and make them feel good and make them good at it, that they're going to want to stay. Yeah. And that's can be quite difficult if you're not entirely confident in where you are and maybe where your company's going.
I think it's trust, and it's the speed of. There's a great book actually called The Speed of Trust. I think it's a Covey book, and it's like really good book to read. But giving your team, trusting them, giving them the skills and the tools and resources that they need to do their job, and training them, and then trusting them, and then getting out their way. And letting them do the job that you've employed them to do, and entrusting them. You've employed them, so it's like letting them do the job that you're trusting, and trust. And yeah, your trust will be. We're human beings. We will always be let down, and it's managing expectations of yourself as the business owner as well, and just recognizing that in a business where we are dealing with human beings, you will be let down. You'll be let down in any relationship. And you've just got to be able to, recognize that, and recognize that people are only being and doing and being the best that they know how to be. It's like they're only doing their best. They won't always do it in the same way that you do or how you like it to be done, but sometimes they will do it a lot better and surprise you. And you've got to employ people that are way smarter, way better, way quicker, way faster than you are if you want to grow your business. Otherwise, otherwise it's just ego leading the business. It's just like, I'm the only person that can do this, which is rubbish.
And you do see that where people, whether they recognize it as ego or not, but they're holding on so tightly because they feel that nobody else can do it as well as them, and they're worried about that.
It's
letting
fear.
go.
It does boil down to fear. Mm-hmm. And fear isn't real. It's just something we make up in our mind.
It's the same as excitement.
Yeah, exactly.
Turn it around.
Flip it. It really is though. It's important that people recognise that because we're all faced with fears, and fear's not going to go away. It's something built into us, but we're only born with two basic fears: the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. Everything else is learnt behaviour, which is mainly instilled into us by the school system, by our peer groups, but mainly by our parents. So subconscious programming from a very early age, from parents that, they're giving off these signals and cues and teaching children how to be scared. So if you've learned that behavior, you can unlearn it. That's the good thing. If you recognize it, and it comes back to that conscious thinking. If you are thinking consciously and you're a conscious thinker and you recognize, I'm in a fearful state, you can then recognize your triggers, and you can work on what happens when I'm triggered into fear, and you can flip it into excitement. So there's ways out of it, but yeah, people are led by fear, unfortunately.
Well, and I think there's something about, so for me, I know that I tend to be, so there are certain situations where, because I'm similar to you in terms of I don't like being in a large group of people. Mm-hmm. So sometimes if I'm trying to get to something like that, there's a big mental barrier about not wanting to go. And I've learned that the best way to get myself to the event or whatever it is to tell myself that I don't have to go, and actually I'm not going to go. And then what I do, and it makes me laugh because I know what I'm doing at the same time as I'm doing it. And then I go, but I'll just go and have a shower, and then I go to have a shower, but I'm still not going, and then but I'll just get dressed. And there was one occasion where I'm sitting in the car and I'm still not going, well, you're in the car, I suppose you might as well. But
so by having the next step.
Yeah, and almost by having given myself permission not to go, and just doing it a little bit at a time, I got there. Whereas if I'd been forcing myself, and I know this from my experience, forcing myself, going, you have to go, to go, it would have been a huge uphill battle. So it's almost, I don't know if I took the fear out of it by doing that, or how I did it, but it's an approach that works for me.
And how did you feel when you got to that event?
I had a great time.
Right. So that's what I'd be anchoring. I'd be going, wow, I'm having a great time. I'm here, I'm networking, I'm building my business, I'm doing this and this, and I'm enjoying this. Let's anchor that feeling. So when you can connect that next time, because think of all that while you're doing this. Oh, I'm having a shower and I'm doing this, but I'm still not going. All that mental real estate you're taking up.
Well, that's true.
You could have been dreaming up new business ideas and fun things and feeling nice. And also you've got to realise the stress effects on the body.
Yes.
I mean, it's not good for us when we've got excess cortisol whizzing through our system and heightening our senses. We're not supposed to live in that high arousal state all the time. It's not good for us. And that's where heart attacks come on and things like that. it's not a good plan. But I've not heard that before. It's an interesting.
And I hadn't thought about it from the fact that actually my headspace was very much about not doing it. And I think for me that what it's about giving myself permission to not do it. And by having the permission to not do it, that actually frees me up to do it. And I do see that, and I can't think of an example at the moment, but I do see that in other things. If you don't put pressure on somebody to do something, they're actually more likely, in some situations, to actually achieve it and exceed what you may be expected. And then there are other people, though, who relish that pressure because they want you to be going, actually, you are going to do a triple flip. And they love that pressure of being pushed hard to do it.
You've hit the nail on the head, and it comes down to that we all learn and do and process in different ways. I mean, I've learned so much through coaching kids and working with literally thousands of families, tens of thousands of families over the years, with psychology of children and the amount of study we've done to make sure our programs are, are bang on the money. And kids learn in different ways, and one child will want the pressure and the other one won't, and ultimately we've got to work to get the result. But I go back to what you said about your event, and I'd also challenge you to always connect the end goal. So your mission, you're like, why is it that you're going to that event? Because if you can connect to your bigger why of why you're doing something, it's going to help you through those hard times. It's going to help you through those scary situations. It's going to help you pick up the phone to make that sale, or pick up that phone to that customer, or deal with that big issue. And because you're connecting it back to your why, and it's like, if I do this is going to move me closer to these goals. It's going to help me and ultimately help other people through what I'm doing as a company or an organization or a person, and what my company and brand stands for. So it's always, I always do that with our scary stuff, because fear ain't going nowhere. We're still going to be hit by this. These thoughts whiz round the ether, and then they pop into our head, and it's not necessarily was a thought, but it's how we choose to act on that thought. Because the more what you focus on, you're going to get. Your thought becomes a feeling, and your feeling becomes an action. So it's really important that we are conscious in the way we think.
Yes. And that is something that, and I will try that for the next time it happens. I will report back to you.
I look forward to it.
But I am always conscious about, conscious decisions. And I talk about that a lot when I was doing project management, and even now with clients. You need to make a conscious decision, because you don't want to end up somewhere. So even if you're working on your business and you suddenly realize you're heading off at this trajectory rather than where you thought you were going, it's not necessarily that that's a problem, as long as you're aware of it and you make a decision to stay on that path, rather than actually sort of thinking, well, how on earth did I end up here? So having those conscious decisions and that awareness of what's happening and what decisions you make, I always think is important, because otherwise you end up somewhere and you just sort of think, well, hang on, this isn't where I wanted to be. This isn't how I wanted things to happen. So it's that being aware of it, I suppose. So,
being conscious in your thoughts. It's interesting you said trajectory, because I'm thinking about standing at the top of a car park with an airbag in front of me and pushing out too far and missing the airbag. But it does relate.
I haven't had that experience.
You haven't had that experience yet. We can arrange it. I have friends that are stunt coordinators, and we can make that happen. But I mean, it's that it is the same thing, and it does relate to what we're talking about with fear, because you're standing at the top, maybe 100 foot in the air, and you've got to hit that airbag. And when they call action, and if you are not consciously aware of what you're going to do, and you push out, you are going to go the wrong trajectory. And it's that word trajectory made me think. I'm like, well, I remember with some really scary situations I've been in movies. I mean, thinking about, I worked on a show called Midsummer Murders, and I had to get set on fire. And I think it was the first time I'd done like a big full fire burn. I'd done little ones before, but this was like full engulfment of my body. And it was one of the things where I'm like, this is quite out of my control. If I don't get put out,
there's a limit to what you can do about it.
You're going to die. Yeah. So I just remember having stressful dreams in the lead up to that stunt, and But on the day, because I'd mentally rehearsed in my mind each day in the lead up how this was going to happen, on the actual day I was really calm because I'd done mental rehearsals, and we teach this with the kids in the gym. It's like setting the goal and doing a mental rehearsal and working backwards so that they can mentally prepare. And it's proven in science when athletes mentally prepare for a race, they've already run that race in their head. So I used to do that with stunts a lot. And I do it in business with different things and different projects, and if I'm doing a big speaking engagement, I'll do a mental rehearsal to make sure it goes well.
As prepared as possible, because that's something that, again, that I've heard, or you hear a lot, is that quite often when you're at the top of your game, so whether you're a tennis player or a stuntman or whatever it is, that the difference between the person who's winning and the person who has lost is the mindset. That actually their skill levels are probably identical, but the mindset is what's seen one person through on this occasion. Yeah. And is that something
I completely agree. I believe in life, everything's 80% mindset, 20% skill set. It's the same, I think, in any sport, gymnastics as an example, 80% mindset, 20% skill set. In business, absolutely. It's a psychological game. Your mind can get your body to do anything if you want it to. So it's studying your mind is like the biggest gift you could give yourself. I remember, I think it was 4 years ago, I did a whole year of just mind work. So I was going on like training course and did like the Tony Robbins Unleash the Power Within course out in America. I just wanted to study the mind. I went and did an NLP training course to work on my own subconscious minds and triggers and beliefs and things like that. And I think we need to be treated, the mind and body are connected. We are one, but we want to be consciously thinking as human beings. And through the stunt career, learned huge amounts of dealing with fear and mind control over the stunts, because ultimately stunts aren't that difficult when you look at it, and they look like they are on the telly, like getting hit by a car or getting set on fire, jumping off a building. There's an element of skill in there. And yes, I'd done the gymnastics background training, but I remember going from a competitive gymnastics career into stunts and going, this ain't that difficult, because compared to being the skill of gymnastics and then just having to jump off something, I haven't got to point my toes or straighten my legs or twist and doing sometimes I've just got to hit my get the trajectory. Got to hit my mark. I worked on the Harry Potter movie. We were doing crazy stuff on everything was shot on green screen. So we're in the studio just covered by green, and it's like pretend there's a giant over there, and pretend there's a this over there and falling down. But the actual skill involved in lots of stunts isn't that high level. There's sort of extremes of that. There are some very skillful stunts that are precision stuff, precision driving, which is a lot of skill, but you don't normally learn that on the stunt set. You'd learn that in your sport. If you were a precision driver or a horse rider or a gymnast, you'd learn that skill. But everything is mindset. I completely agree with you.
Well, and just coming even, so I was taking a few years back, I was learning how to ride again. And I had, in my mind, I was very clear that I didn't want to jump. But everybody had said to me that jumping was a necessary skill, that I should learn how to jump, because then if I was out on a hack or something, that, if your horse did bolt or something and decided to jump something, at least you would know what to do and you'd be able to deal with it. So I thought, okay, that makes sense to me. I fully understand the logic behind this being a base skill that I need to have. So when I get to that point, I'll do it. But I'm only going to do it to this point of enough that, and I was completely fixated almost on that's all I'm going to do. And I'm not actually sure this story relates, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. As I'm thinking about it, does it? But so I get to the point where I'm now sort of my riding skills are enough that I'm ready to move on to that level. And so my riding instructor puts the pole across. Now we are talking this pole. I'm not even sure it was actually off the ground. It might have just been laying on the ground even. And she tells me all of the things that I need to do. And, there's the approach and there's these different stages that you go through. And then you sort of, and then the horse go up. And so my heart pop. And I was just like, oh, wow. And she said to me, the look on your face, she said, the whole way up to it, you just looked so tense and just, and then you just sort of went pop and you were just beaming. And I loved it.
Brilliant.
And it was that sudden expectation of, one, I think that I could do it, and two, that I actually liked it. So, as I said, I'm not overly sure I'm relating to, in my head, there was a relation to what you were saying.
Yeah. I get it. It's lots of the time it's not as scary as we think as well. And the anticipation of something is more scary than the doing. Like your example earlier of going to the event, that whole anticipation had you in knots, and your blood pressure and your cortisol whizzing through your body. And the same with the jumping on the horse, the fear of jumping, because it's like, wow, I've got to do this on the horse. But then the anticipation. But then when you do it, it's like, I can do that. And that's how we build confidence. Ultimately, that's what we're doing down at the gym schools. We're setting a goal. So in your example, jumping the horse over this to begin with, a small jump, but you're going to build that up. So there's the goal. Mm-hmm. Here's the building block. She taught you knew how to ride. There's a building block, and it's gradual, hit the goal. And then the feedback you get is, wow, I can do that. Yes. Self-belief. It's a confidence loop. So it's then setting a harder goal. And it's the same in business. We just have to keep pushing the bar up.
So I'm going to take us back to business on that one. You've started off, you've got now lots of children coming through, you've got staff, you're still at Sunbury because, as you said, you were there for 5 or 6 years, you're doing the stunts. At what point, and I don't know if you're at this point even, did you then start expanding out so that Flair was now in other locations as well as your start location or that one moved? But also, did you start to make a shift from the stunt work being less of a focus and Flair being more of a focus?
Yeah.
And how did you feel that you went through any sort of, transformation or transition of going from being a stuntman to being a businessman?
Good question. Yeah, definitely. I haven't done a stunt for about 4.5 years now. Yeah, so I started getting really serious about business probably 8 years ago. So my business has really accelerated 8 years ago. It was like, wow, this can become big. And that's when we expanded, and we went from 2 sites to 3 sites to 4 sites to 5 sites. We franchised and expanded the team, and we've got offices, we've got a marketing department, and we've grown. I fell out of love with stunts, and I think it's important for us all to recognise that we're allowed to change our path and to do different things as we evolve as a human being. But I think I personally felt guilty for when I stepped away from stunts, because it was something I had wanted to do ever since I was a kid, a little boy. It was like my dream, and but what you've got to realise, I'd made my dream a reality. I'd been there, done it. I'd amassed over 300 credits for TV and film, worked on movies, including the Harry Potter franchise, Sherlock Holmes, Game of Thrones, TV dramas like EastEnders and all those sorts of things. And I'd done a lot and had a great ride and really enjoyed it. It had funded my business and got things going and helped grow things, and I developed as a person. And it's that permission, to giving yourself the permission to go, okay, I don't want to go into stunt coordinating. It doesn't float my boat. I fell out of love with the TV and film world. And also I evolved in my business training and development to recognize that I can have more impact on the world by putting my energies into building businesses, because we're affecting thousands of families in a positive way. And if I'm staying in the stunt world, I can't impact people and therefore the world in a great way. And I think as we, get older and learn more stuff, we recognize that life's about contribution. It's like, the secret to being happy is giving and is contribution. So, contributing into the companies and growing those, I think for me, has made me a lot happier. But yeah, there was that guilt piece of, but I'm a stuntman, and we shouldn't label ourselves like that. That's what the school system does. It's like puts labels on kids, and you're not anything. Your job and your company does not define who you are as a human being. And I learned that through stepping out from stunts. And I recognized through my business training, like trading time for money is really dumb, and you will never become rich. One of my big goals is a certain wealth figure as well. And it's like, that won't ever happen, trading time for money. You recognize that when you learn about business and you grow and evolve. So yeah, stepped away from the stunt world, stepped away from working on like the Star Wars movies and big movies, and friends would go, wow, you could be working on these movies. And it's like that. I've done those, and it's kind of like, it doesn't float my boat anymore.
And was it hard? So one, as you say, there's the pressure from friends who, if they aren't involved in that world, might see it as, glamorous and exciting, and you're all connected in it.
And it's not very glamorous, trust me. It's the most unglamorous profession in the world.
But you've got that sort of peer pressure, I suppose, around you. Is there also a fear of leaving it, and if I leave it and I start focusing on the business, that I can't go back? So is there anything that's kind of made it difficult to step away from it? Because sometimes you want to hold on to something because it feels safe and it's comfortable.
Oh, comfort zone thing. Fortunately with me, no, purely because I've just been so used to constantly pushing myself outside my comfort zone, and I realised that that's where learning and growth happens. So fortunately not. I lost my train of thought because the cat has just jumped down from its from where.
The cat has been peacefully snoozing, but has decided we're not interesting enough to stay in the room. Hopefully you'll disagree.
Fortunately I learned through what I've done over the years that, success happens when you're outside of your comfort zone, and you've got to constantly be pushing yourself out of that comfort zone to evolve and grow and make stuff happen. So I didn't really have the fear of leaving. I'd grown the company to a good stage in terms of like cash flow as well, to know that I could step out and still have lifestyle. But I think it's also important for people that are maybe listening and are in jobs or early stages of business to recognize that it's okay to downsize if you have to, and put everything into what you're doing and grow your business. It's the only way. You want to put everything in, and it doesn't matter if, I lived in we downsized before we moved into this lovely place, and it was like we had to, because we were in a growth stage of one, being able to afford this type of place, and then needing to hoard cash for cash flow. We were in a studio flat for 2 years, like just it wasn't glamorous, and I think we've got to recognise that you've got to do what you've got to do to put everything into your business. And if that means downsizing, and if that means taking a pay cut with a job that you might have, because I've had mates that I want to go into business, I want to do this, and I've helped them realise how they could make that happen. But then when they recognise that, I'm not going to be having this cash flow coming in, and I'm going to have to downsize, I might have to sell my house, and I might have to. And that's taking people aren't prepared to step out their comfort zone, literally a comfortable house, or a comfortable, to go, I might have to go and do this to make that happen. And you've got to be prepared to do that in business and to be able to make it happen. But I was fortunate with stunts, but by design, I think everything is through choices, and by design, to design so that I could step out. Out the stomach. So fortunately with that whole comfort zone thing.
So, which is great, because I know I've had that conversation with some people where there was somebody fairly recently who had said, should I leave my job and focus full time on my business? And this was actually, I think it might have been a Facebook group or something. And there were all of these people, saying to her, yes, just go for it. And I just wrote back to her and said, you've got to know how much risk you're willing to take. So if you understand the risks of doing that and you're willing to accept them, then absolutely go for it, because it's probably not going to happen while you're working. But if you're not willing to take those risks, which I think is, your friends, they're going, well, actually, I'm in a comfortable house and I don't want to risk that, then it's maybe not for you.
Most people aren't prepared to do the hard things today that are going to give them that, amazing life in the future. And unfortunately, it's becoming more and more with kids. Kids aren't being taught, unfortunately, the resilience and grit of long-term gratification, because they're on social media, which is giving them instant gratification, hits of dopamine from the gamification that social media is. And look, business isn't for everybody as well, and that's okay as well. Some people just don't like being uncomfortable, and business is uncomfortable a lot of the time. We see in the media, social press, etc., TV shows, we see the glamorous side of stuff. You see Alan Sugar's private jet and this, and it's like, yes, you can have all that. It's lovely, but there's a cost and a price to pay, and it's hard work, grit, dedication, long hours, dealing with lots and lots of crap that comes up to make things to work and to get that cash flow happening. But business ain't for everybody. And my advice for someone that's saying, "Oh, should I step out of my job?" is, well, what is your calling? What's your long-term why? And this is the stuff that, again, we're not being taught these skills in the classroom. So it's a parent's job to be helping their children connect to their why and to understand what it is. What is it what's your purpose? What's your core purpose in the world? What do you love doing? What makes your heart sing? And when you find that out, that gives you the answer. That's your moral compass. So you can go, oh, am I enjoying the job? Is my job giving me that fulfillment at this stage in my life and where I want to be? And if the answer is no, then change your circumstance, up your standards.
Well, exactly. I was, strange enough, going to a riding lesson again. And I had that summer, I'd had a blip with the riding where I had just, for whatever reason, I had a mental block on it. And I was driving to this riding lesson and I was feeling sick. And I thought, well, hang on a second. I got rid of that blip. I've dealt with it. I'm not worried about it. So what's making me feel like this? And I realized it was the contract I was in. And I thought, well, this is ridiculous. How can I be working somewhere that's making me physically feel ill?
Yeah.
And that was the point where I went to my riding lesson. I don't think I jumped that time. But then I went back and I thought about it some more and I thought, okay, well, clearly you need to leave. And for me, as somebody who's always been in contracts, that decision to leave, it isn't maybe the same as somebody with a family and not used to being in that environment. But it was actually, I can't stay in this when it's making me feel physically ill. It's not good.
Yeah.
And I did, and I left, and that was actually the last contract that I've done. So I've then been looking at, what am I doing? Where am I going? What's taking me forward.
And have you felt bad like that since coming out of that?
I think there's the challenges, as you've said, there's the challenges of money. There's the, I've gone through a lot of thinking about what am I actually offering and trying to find the thing that speaks to people and speaks to me as well. So there's been the fear of finances. But what there is at the moment is the podcasting, which started off completely inadvertently by starting this podcast, but has led to me changing my business. And that now fills me with excitement because I like speaking to people. I like helping them to come up with ideas. So it's taken a while and it's still very fledgling steps. So I don't know if it's going to completely work, but I feel excited and I feel positive and I feel that those stressful times over the past, little while will have been worth it, because without them, I wouldn't have even got to this point. I wouldn't have left going, I'm going to start doing podcast services, because it just wouldn't have happened. And one of the reasons for this podcast is to share those tough times so that people go, actually, when I look at him, he's successful, but he said that there's hard times.
I can talk about a lot of hard times if you want to talk about hard times.
It's always good to talk about hard times.
Congratulations, though. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
What a breakthrough, and that's what's important. It's like listening to ourselves and having those conversations with ourselves. It's like talking to our inner voice and talking to ourselves, because that's conscious thinking. That's and too many people are just walking through in the matrix, hypnotized, getting on their commute to work, hypnotized. And it's only when you start going, well, wait a minute, why am I feeling like that? Or, that's not good. And you're now connecting, having conscious thought.
Yes.
And it's a good thing. It's just that's where we want to be. The more conscious thinking we can do, the more breakthroughs we can have. It's fantastic.
So tell me about some of the hard times, because it's always good for people to hear some of the hard times.
Oh gosh!
And then you can tell me some of these things. Maybe tell me a story about the stunt work after that.
I think whenever someone says hard times or what's the most difficult thing within the business, and whenever I talk to people about business and other business owners, it always comes back to staffing. Like that's always seems to be when we're dealing with emotion, like dealing with human beings, and like so culture being really important. So before we really got to grips with what and how we wanted our culture to be, people would just be making it up as they go along. You have to have a systemized people systems, from position agreements through to onboarding processes, through to training, appraisal systems, putting those in. And we've had our fair share of bad hires because we haven't had really strong, robust recruitment and onboarding systems, which we have now. So we've had, when you have a bad person in the company, not necessarily a bad person, but their behaviours are. Mm-hmm. So when it's the wrong behaviours that aren't congruent with your values, that will sabotage your brand, that will make things not feel right, that will rock the boat, they will influence others, other people will jump on the bandwagon. So we've had our fair share of bad hires, and ultimately as a business owner I have to accept full responsibility, because I've not hadn't in the past put systems in place to make sure we didn't hire badly. Mm-hmm. And now we have really robust systems so that we get it right more times than we get it wrong. So always when we talk about like hard times, it comes back to like people, and I'm a firm believer that you can't manage a person because you can't manage a bag of emotion, and people are bags of emotion. You have to manage the system that the person's operating, or at least the result of the system that the person's operating. Now, that's not depersonalizing like the humans and people in our business, because ultimately every business is a collection of people. People and relationships are what make the world go round. So, but in terms of management, the way we manage stuff, we're really system driven in terms of like, this is the result that we need out of this. And if you're not delivering it, we're either failing you with the training or you're the wrong person to run that system. So we need to retrain, or we need to think about moving you into a different role, or maybe we're no longer the right fit for you, in the same way that I was no longer the right fit with my stunt career. It's like, things had changed and moved on. But so hard times. One, I can think back to when we tell this story at our Flair Necessities training day, and in the year 2005, so what's that, 5 or 6 years into running the company, 2005, we ran an event inside a giant circus big top. So used like my circus stunt background, and we ran an event inside a circus big top, which was a gymnastics and trampolining competition. And long story short, I didn't have a clue about budgeting, and I overspent and almost bankrupted the company, and we almost weren't here.
Wow.
Now,
we wouldn't have been having the same conversation.
I know, and I had sleepless nights. I just wanted this event to be amazing, and it was an amazing event, and for everybody else, but for me it was sleepless nights, the highest stress levels I've ever experienced. It was our first big event, and it was just so stressful, but taught me valuable lessons on like, right, actually, budgeting, this is how you do it. Right, let's learn about that then. Let's never be in this situation again. And we've been close to the wire many times, and you push the boundaries in terms of cash flow, but you build up your war chest of cash. But that event was sleepless nights and painful and hard, and you learn from it. You learn from it and move on.
Well, and it's different if you're close to the wire, because you've made, again, back to our consciousness, but if you've made a conscious decision to take that risk and you know that it's going to take you close to the wire, as opposed to actually, I haven't been budgeting, I haven't thought about this at all, and it's that completely unconscious thing, and it's led you to a problem that you couldn't even have anticipated.
Ignorance is bliss.
That's right, until the finances come in. So that brings us to the end of part 2 of my conversation with Richard Dwyer. I decided on editing this that I was actually going to split it into 3 parts. So part 3 of Richard Dwyer will be next week, where we start to talk a little bit more about how he looks after himself and the importance of mental well-being and some of the challenges that we as a society are facing these days, and not just adults, but children as well. So have a wonderful week, and I look forward to talking to you next week. If you've been thinking about starting your own podcast, why not join me on one of my podcast courses? You can find all the information at bridgeroadconsultants.com/events. This podcast was produced by Bridge Road Consultants Limited with original music from Dinley Penny Music.
You've been listening to Deborah Levitt on Bridging Gaps, the business podcast.